You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabalcast, and this week we are yet again holding ourselves accountable for how bad we are at this game. That game being our Goldilocks set reviews, where we have our too low, too high, and just right cards. So with that, let's get it taken away.
So to start out with underhyped, I was looking at Malboro. It was a 50-cent card when we did our Patreon episode. It has dropped to 15 cents. And the reason I looked at this as being underhyped was because I thought it would have the opportunity to appear in Pauper and maybe a constructed format or two. And while we have actually seen this appear in Pauper and a very small appearance in CEDH and Legacy, it really wasn't much in the grand scheme of things. It was just a couple of people testing things over the last month and a half. It didn't really garner a lot of interest. It didn't kind of fall into a reanimator shell in Pauper. That format kind of tilted a little bit after the bannings prior to Final Fantasy. That changed the format in ways I didn't really expect it to. Things kind of sped up. The texture of some decks changed. And in Legacy, Malboro didn't replace Troll of Khazad-dûn, which I didn't really expect it to, but it also didn't play into the ability of that deck to play a mid-range game and actually start casting its threats. Instead, that deck is currently inbreeding to beat itself, and it's playing more disruption with Thought Seizes and going in a different way because no action was taken in the Legacy format. So at the end of the day, I'm not happy to have been wrong about this because I do think that there are people still experimenting with it up until the week of recording, and they might pave the way for the future. But at the end of the day, an L is an L, and so that's what we're looking at here. It's just, in one instance, I can point to inaction by WotC, and in another, I can point to action by WotC and also a little bit of format adjustment.
Yeah, I still think that there are a non-zero number of Nick Fit players out there that are like, this fits in my 52 flex slots.
Yeah.
I just want to see them perform.
I like that
this was one that I thought.
I like how the other 8 slots are undisputedly Veteran Explorer and Cabal Therapy. That's it. That's
Yep. Those are the only ones that are auto includes. Yeah. Anything else is just gravy.
Yeah. All
right. Sorry. My underhyped, though, was Gilgamesh Master at Arms. Now, at the time, I believe it was sitting at around 75 cents to $1. And I said, this is about where it should be long term because, again, this is a tied to a license, Universes Beyond or Within, because it's within standard rotation or whatever. But I said, this is the kind of thing that could go in a Godo list. And I still stand by that. I still stand by 75 cents to $1 is probably right for a card like this and a set like this that is going to be around for as long as this is, because this isn't something that breaks in standard, really. There aren't a lot of flip the top 7 and get an equipment decks that have existed in the past ever in standard. So I don't think that's where this is going to have lifespan. I still think we're in that price range. We're a little bit lower now, around 50 cents market. But I think in a year or two, this does get back to that 75 cent to $1 mark, which I think is what I said when I picked it too.
Yeah, I think there's also an amount of how do we cobble this into a Boros equipment deck in Commander and make it worthwhile?
Yep.
Or how do we regenerate interest in Boros equipment in Commander that isn't just Gilgamesh and Cloud? What makes people want to go back and actually rebuild that deck? Similarly, Godo isn't too aggressive, and it isn't necessarily unsavory to go infinite with not Golos, I'm sorry, Godo. But there also has to be an amount of people that want to either go back and dust that deck off or build that deck. And so I think we might be waiting for a little bit more of a push to it. And while Gilgamesh could have been that, it wasn't, and it's not like those decks are often regenerated. For the Boros equipment deck, I think it really did take the uncommon Boros Commander from not AFR, but Commander Legends Baldur's Gate or something like that.
Yeah,
or maybe
that one.
Commander Masters. There's the uncommon Boros one that's basically an uncommon white commander that pairs with it. That's just like become the de facto, right? They regenerated interest in it because it changed the way the deck played out of the command zone.
Yeah.
And Gilgamesh can do that, but Godo is just a better mono red commander for that.
Yeah.
And we were given Cloud that fits in the 99 and Gilgamesh which fit in the 99 and only play into that theme. They don't change it meaningfully. So I think, to your point, we just got to wait a little bit longer, and people need to find a bit more of a draw to it, and then we'll get there. Like, if these had come out before the Fallout set did with Dogmeat and that equipment, then we might have seen...
that would have been insane.
Yeah, then Gilgamesh might have seen a push because of that. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on to overhyped, we have the same answer here for wildly different reasons. When we recorded the hype episode, Sephiroth Fabled Soldier was a $61 card. It's dropped down to about $40. And at the end of the day, it took a bit, but modern players are starting to experiment with this. And Hapatra players and CEDH are also kind of poking at this card here and there. As a card in the 99, it is just outside the top 20 insofar as commanders for the main set go, according to Rec. And as a commander, it is the second most popular from the main set. When checking the Aristocrats theme, this is still listed in the new cards section, but hasn't made it up to the commander area. So it's hard to tell immediately what impact this will actually have as a commander. And at the end of the day, it's not even on the page when you look at the life gain decks, which is somewhere that this card should also have just slotted in immediately. At the moment, when looking at the card directly, it appears to be almost as popular in just Final Fantasy, in quotes, decks than individual themes summed together. And this could still be an issue with the data settling, but I expect that to actually remain true, especially as the current price point of $40 for efficiency in casual non-Final Fantasy themes might just remain a bridge too far for people to actually want to buy in. And at the end of the day, I'm going to consider this an L because I really didn't expect this to hit in Modern or CEDH. I expect it to just absolutely fall flat, like I talked about.
Yeah.
Because how many times do we need to iterate on this same design? How far down the mana curve can we push this design? This is a casual theme, and people aren't just sitting around waiting for the umpteenth version of this effect. They have as much redundancy as they need. They need to start putting in additional support for the deck to actually make it work well. And yeah, this plays into that a little bit because it does cost 3, but it is also tiresome. That was kind of the crux of the conversation when we did the hype episode.
Yeah, because I picked the same thing for overhyped. It's, and for the same reasons, and then added to, guys, this is, let's stop overhyping stuff like this, because again, it's not this is a card that when you first look at it, if you're just looking at vanilla, what's the text on it? It's a 3/3 that, draws you a card from a dead creature for 3. That seems really good. Mm-hmm. And then you read the rest of the text and you're like, oh my God, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, it is a rare instance where they added more text that is powerful to a card, and somehow it got worse along the way. But yeah, it's just, it was never going to be that good, because it is. It's in those like casual, not spiky, so it can't hit your 60 card, Pro Tour formats in a meaningful way, and it's not good enough for CEDH, so it's not going to take off financially in that regard. And it's like fine for casual, but like you said, this is like the 14th time we've gotten this effect. Like, it's not. Same reasons, just piggybacks.
Yeah. Bloodthirsty Conqueror and Foundations cost 5, has a larger body, does the exact same thing. It cost half as much, and it cost 2 more mana, but everything about that card was literally bigger and better. What has Sephiroth has going for it is the opportunity to flip it and make an emblem and give yourself a permanent aristocrat effect. And like I stated, I honestly think that $40, yes, is just a bridge too far for a lot of these players to pay for yet another of the same effect.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Are you ready?
Yes.
Right. To Just Right. I had VV Orniteer. At that time, VV was worth $36. VV is now currently worth $50. The notes that I took to read this week just say, read the above, and it is just my text from the hype episode.
Yeah.
Because that text is just a big old W. And what I said was, I think the hype was right on VV, but the price was wrong. As we continually see, any card that pre-orders for more than $20 rarely holds that price. That was absolutely wrong. It stayed at 50. My CEDH locals have been brewing with this since it was spoiled. I've seen people start brewing with this in Modern. And guess what? It's showed up in both places. There's not a lot to talk about VV in Legacy or Vintage and nothing about VV in Standard. So I was wrong about Standard, but absolutely right about Legacy or Vintage. A lot of people want to try and combo kill with VV and are looking at things like Blazing Shoal and Ophidian Eye, which makes sense, but outside of CEDH, you don't actually need to lead into that. Also still correct. You don't even need to play a true Spellslinger deck. Yep, it's just a couple spells that get the job done. We got Corey Steelcutter and Dragonstorm and VV slots into the exact same style of deck in all formats. And you'll never guess what happened when he hit the Pro Tour.
Really good.
Yeah, we will see VV and Cutter holding hands. Will we see VV and Cutter holding hands? Probably not, but the power, utility, and similarity of the play pattern of those two can't be really overlooked. I was wrong about that. They basically just went into the exact same deck together.
Yeah.
And especially when you add stock up to the mix to keep your hand flush, they work extremely well in concert, which is exactly what happened. I think VV is going to do great things in all formats and help create or set the foundation for what an Izzet spell deck really looks like. And I tell you what, VV was a contributing problem to why Monstrous Rage was banned in Standard. So yeah, it really did kind of set the foundation for that. I don't think VV showed up in Pioneer, which is fine. That format is still dead for the year 2025 and might just be dead into the future. We have not had the announcement of what the 2026 RCQ season is going to look like yet. And insofar as Modern is concerned, we have seen VV show up there, but not in great numbers. Modern just kind of floated along and sputtered towards the end of the RCQ season. There was a bit of innovation, but it seemed like people were holding strong to what they knew instead of innovating over a format that's basically going to end in a couple of weeks, like prior to even a Pro Tour. Like we're going to have a Modern Pro Tour this year well after the RCQ season ends, which is fine. That's just how things work. And then, like I said,
we'll see innovation then. Maybe.
And then in Legacy and Vintage, this card just isn't doing a whole lot. I have seen a smidge of experimentation with VV in Vintage, about the same amount as I've seen experimentation with Tifa in Vintage. People are just kind of trying new things. It's not really working out. The Oklahoma City land run happened. I don't think anybody that did well played VV there in either the team's event or the Vintage main. It was still just a Luris world, everybody else living in it. And everything aside from putting VV in the Cutter decks holds true. We might see VV in the Cutter decks after EOE. It all depends on what that set actually brings to Standard and kind of does. Foundations rotates, which is really big for just the Izzet decks. They don't actually lose anything besides Monastery Mentor, I believe. And Burst Lightning.
I think that's it.
And Burst Lightning.
Oh, Burst.
But that doesn't mean you can't just change the context of that deck away from being something that wants to just sit around and play a lot of spells early on. You can play a realistic game that is a little slower and lean into stock up more. So VV could actually be just as powerful moving into Standard. And so I think no matter what, kind of like calling VV out as a spec was just a win.
Yeah. My just right now... We've gone below my just right number, but I still think I'm right long term. Okay. Anyways, it is a Realm Reborn. Green 4. Rite of Paradise. Other permanents, not just creatures. Other permanents you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Again, it's a rare in a collector booster set with an alternate art treatment, so it's going to go down a lot more before it goes up. It's 50 cents. There was a time where Rites of Flourishing was 50 cents. Or sorry, what's the Cryptolith Rite? That's what I mean. Cryptolith Rite, yeah, was 50 cents, and now it's in the $6 plus range often. That's where I think this card ends up long term, but I still think this is just right because, I mean, it's 6 mana for this effect. So it's never going to be above more than $2 unless there is a push of Final Fantasy fandom that comes back for some reason. But I don't think we get that. Unless we get the Realm Reborn card game from Final Fantasy made, and this just has like a cameo in it or something. But this is just, as has kind of been the theme of this episode for things that have been iterated upon infinite times. They just are not always worth the most.
Yeah.
I was a little bit high at the time, sitting at like $1.50, but I also think I did say we'll see it drop to 50 cents before it comes back up. But
I still am not sure how to feel about this card because it's fighting Cryptolith, right? And I think what my EDH players also agree on is the better version in Enduring Vitality.
Yep.
Because you can't really remove that effect with a single spell. You got to go twice. Unless it's a bounce spell or an exile. And a Realm Reborn costs more and does more, very much so, but not in the same kind of vein as Mana Reflections to Mana Flare.
Exactly.
Where Mana Reflections makes all your rocks tap for more. It's difficult to imagine that Realm Reborn can offer more utility in the color green than Urza High Lord Artificer does in the color blue.
Yeah.
And because I don't know how to evaluate, what avenue to take to really evaluate the card, it makes it difficult for me to kind of speak on it.
Yeah, gauge that.
Yeah, so I don't think I had a lot to say then, and I still don't have a lot to say now because that's kind of what's going on is I have all these different heuristics to pull from, and I can't find one that really fits. But for a number of reasons in regards to Final Fantasy theming, I do think this is a fine pick because this is one of those situations when you know about the importance of a Realm Reborn to the Final Fantasy franchise. So there's also that pull that I can't downplay. So I don't know. This is definitely something that I look at every now and again and just see where it is. But
yeah.
All right. Ready for picks?
Let's do it.
I want you to close out, so I'm going to go first because you're going to talk about some LGS stuff, right?
Yes, indeed.
Right, so I'm going to go first. This week, I am looking at Herald of Secret Streams. If you are in our Patreon, I talked about this pretty early in the week because this card was already moving. I'm looking at this ahead of Edge of Eternities release and the Counterintelligence deck. This is a Merfolk Warrior that costs 3 and a blue. It's a 2/3, and it says creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. Now, when it comes to the Counterintelligence deck, there are a number of different types of counters that are being placed on things. And this card kind of operated in the shadows. A lot of people were looking at charge counters and things like that. And as I was coming into this episode, I remembered that I've been watching this card since 2004. And I think after actually reading through the deck list, I decided that this was the card that we wanted to try and pull the trigger on. And I discussed it a little bit about it in Discord. And so those in Discord will get my show notes, or will have had my show notes for a few days. Everybody else is hearing this live. So, quick advertisement for that. The stats on this card are pretty interesting when it comes to Card Kingdom. When I was taking my notes, they had 14 copies for sale at $8.50. I think they're going for about $9 now. They were buying 53 copies at $4.30. They're now buying 71 copies at $4.40, and that's like a 2-day difference. On TCG Player, there were 110 listings with a market of $4. There are now 102 listings with a market of $4.22. And for those keeping track and think, okay, there is some arbitrage opportunity there, you are kind of behind the 8 ball now because we are seeing price plus shipping be about $8, which is what I predicted this would be when I put my notes in Patreon. When it comes to my initial information. I've had this on my list since January of 2004. CK was buying 53 at $1.75. They had 8 for sale at $3.50. So we can see that almost like triple up in buy price and, you know, a little over like 225% in retail price. There are also 282 listings on TCG Player and a market price of $2.26. So we can see like well over half the listings have gone and the market price has almost doubled. When it comes to what this card does, this is exactly reading the card explains the card. Creatures you control +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. That's it. It's no secret. It's just a 2/3 creature with that passive text. Writ large within the format, there's not a lot of non-obvious text surrounding this card. From the commanders we see on rec all the way down to the makeup of those various decks. Everything you want to do with this card is espoused in the text, and it's just one word, combat, with an exclamation mark afterwards. There are some decks that want to go tall with their commander, like Animar, Soul of Elements, Helga, Skittish Seer, and Sab Sunen, Luxa Embodied, which others want to go wide with creatures or creature tokens and place counters on them, all to make them unblockable, utilizing commanders like Zexara, the Exemplary, Hawkball of the Surging Soul, and Galadriel, Light of the Valinor. So there's no version of the +1/+1 counters theme that cannot or should not utilize this card. Go tall, go wide. This also plays into all the counter doubling or counter increasing cards like Doubling Season, Branching Evolution, cards that are both rather casual and rather appealing. So this means our audience is fairly broad and rather deep, which is something we love when it comes to our speculations. There's also some really cool stuff that I learned about when I was looking at this card, like Uncivil Unrest, that also plays into the same theme in a number of color pairings that are rather popular with +1/+1 counters. Uncivil Unrest is another rare enchantment, and it says creatures with +1/+1 creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them deal double damage.
Yep.
So that just puts you in base Izzet, which means you can go into Teamer, which gives you off the top of my head Animar, Soul of Elements, or you can go into Jeskai, you can go into Grixis. Like, everything is on the table for you with just those two enchantments, and you're just going to enter combat. Timeline on this. When I was taking my notes, there are 203 total copies left on the open market for the set version. There were 2 pages I was looking at. On page 1, the largest quantity I saw was 12 near mint with $3. Sorry, 12 near mint at $3.36 with $1.31 shipping. So that was a $5 card. And on page 2, we started seeing copies like for $4.81 with $4.99 shipping. The quantity on that was 10. That was the largest quantity I saw there. And so what happened. Now it's an $8 card. It went from 4 to 8 like I predicted. When I was taking my notes, 60 copies needed to sell through before this became an $8 card, which absolutely happened. And based on the fact this moves about 6 copies a day ahead of the Commander deck release, I said we could expect this to kind of blow up in about 2 weeks. It looks like it's actually happened ahead of time. And even now, no longer can you actually arbitrage from TCG Player to CK, but you could have dropshift like, I think, 10 to 15 copies of this card from one to the other. Something I did mention in Discord when I mentioned this card. Reprint equity. I said there's ample opportunity for a reprint, but we are not getting it in the Commander deck from Edge of Eternity, so we're actually going to be insulated for a bit. So buying now and flipping anytime within like the next 7 to 8 weeks is going to be butter, and then it's going to last even longer because chances are we're not going to get Herald of Secret Streams in a Spider-Man Commander deck. It just doesn't really fit. It's a war. It's a Merfolk Warrior.
Yeah.
Not really.
Namor's not coming in that set.
Yeah, exactly. Not really coming in that set. I don't. And what's after that? Is it the Avatar set?
Yeah.
Again,
Avatar.
Hard pressed. Oh. By quantity, I don't actually think I have any of these left, as I did move them when I moved Ixalan. That was when it was rotated. But I'd happy to buy in again with the Counterintelligence deck releasing with Edge of Eternities and the +1/+1 counter strategy that is going to be offered inside that deck. Because again, There are going to be a number of counter-based strategies in them, but +1/+1 is going to be one of the strongest inside it and one of the easiest to bolster. So that's the card I'm looking at this week. Herald of Secret Streams.
I love this card because you put it perfectly. It has a broad yet deep audience. It's also not like, even though it is from the era of like Lorwyn, where there are a lot of effects like this that were just overcosted for no reason, this one is actually like appropriately costed, I think, for the body. And I think that's one of the things that it like makes it so much better than some of the other things from that era with like static effects like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something that, I mean, every time we get Simic, we get inundated with counter stuff. So yeah, this is one that, especially long term, I think is just great.
What you got for me?
Yes, I picked, and this is more to highlight kind of a market trend than anything else. And my pick this week, and interesting because we are doing our Final Fantasy look back, is Cecil Dark Knight from Final Fantasy. Just the base, no alt art, no foil, nothing, base version. Now that we're like firmly in a release cadence, which is awful, but we've kind of figured out how some of the finance of stuff works. One of the things that I've started seeing locally, with LGS level, is we've had a lot of people that are coming in now when it's like, all right, I am financially aware of what my hobby is. I understand that being aware of that will help me finance my own hobby. And a lot of them have started talking about, okay, well, Final Fantasy is going to be around for like 12 years or whatever it is in standard. What are some of the cards that aren't your namesakes? They're not your VVs. They're not your flagship tentpole cards from that set. Are people like, could we look at and potentially get something from? And Cecil Dark Knight, interestingly, is the 44th most played card in Standard, and it is the 16th most played creature, according to MtG Goldfish on the date we are recording, 7/24. And yet, it's a $4 card on TCG Player. It's a rare, admittedly, and a collector booster set. I don't know that we're getting more collector boosters. So this is going to be the version people are able to access for the next 5 years. I think it actually is, that this card is in Standard. And we've never had a Universes Beyond like this in Standard in a format that requires continuous printing. So it's hard for me to say that we're going to get this, because we cover it every year. How many earning calls is this in a row now that they've been like, unexpected licensing fees from Universes Beyond cost us too much money? I just don't think this is something that sees an easy reprint. Cards like this in this set specifically seem like an opportunity to really basically get a leg up on being ahead of things. This is a case where obviously the card is good. Don't have to read it. It's more of a market highlight of, hey, let's try to look at these things and be a little bit more long-term about it. Because for the last 5-6 years, MTG Finance has been almost entirely in a speculative bubble, outside of, your blue chip, reserve list, stuff like that. But this is one that I think, now that we have what feels like almost a normal Standard again, like 7 years ago, what Standard used to feel like, what the organized play scene used to feel like, we can start making some of these more patient moves. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to highlight specifically with a card like this, because this is the kind of thing you're looking for. It has a pedigree in Standard. It has a pedigree in Extant decks. It is generically powerful, so that the deck it's in now fades out, we still have a few years where another card could come in and all of a sudden bump it up in terms of power level. So just wanted to point that out and say that's something I've been kind of looking at, especially now that, you have some of our regulars coming in and saying they're doing it as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of paying attention to what's going on at locals at the LGS level. I'm not to say that I'm not in touch with mine, but the majority of the locals that I see are enfranchised Eternal players.
Yeah.
And the Standard players that I have access to, I'm going to use the word stodgy here, but they are stodgy based on stubbornness. They're like, The decks that I want to play are just mid-range control or like soupy black decks, and I wouldn't play anything else. And if the format never changed, I would be the saddest person ever. And so something
Yeah.
like this, like, it would seem appealing based on that, but it doesn't go in the decks they want to play, so they're not going to be interested in something like that, which is just like the most miserable thing to think about. Like,
Right.
I can't cast, this town ain't big enough on this card and get enough value, so why would I? And like, just go play in a corner.
Yes, please.
And like, that's honestly, I think one of the reasons why my standard players are disappearing, and it's just the same like 3 and 4 people over and over again. It's just like you play the most miserable things to play against, and you're just not a worthwhile human. So
yeah,
like, I just don't have that kind of insight because my standard environment is wildly different. So it's really nice to hear that like there are people out there who are being mindful about their status in regards to what they're doing financially with the game, that they are looking at how to better themselves and their ability to keep up with the game, and also how impactful this card is in the game, and almost quietly doing so, because honestly, I don't know many people who are actively paying attention to standard, because we just had a banning that effectively rotated the format like 2 or 3 weeks before the format literally rotated.
Yep. It reminded me of when they banned Rampaging Ferocidon, and then a month before it rotated out, they were like, "Fuck it, let's take it off."
Yeah, run it. Give them back the dinosaur. So
too good.
It's really cool to see that that standard is being played meaningfully somewhere. That there are people who are attuned with it. That stats show that there are cards like this out there that are quietly just doing well, and people are paying attention to that data themselves, right? So I think there's just a lot here to like overall about this card, especially the fact that it might not have looked at it when I brought up the stocks graph, so I'm going to bring it up again, but when you zoom in, the card is on its way up. It's a very slow gainer, but it is definitely on its way up. And the hope is that outside of standard, there's enough to bolster this, because we don't know what's going to happen with Edge and how everything's going to change. So it's hard to rely on that. But we can say this is a legendary creature. It's an Orzhov. It fits into various decks that are base those color. If you want to run it as a legend, there are people that I know who are interested in the card Cecil. It does have a little bit of character appeal like that. There's a lot going on for this card that I like.
Yeah.
So that is going to be it for me in this episode. Anything else you want to discuss on the way out?
Yes. So I did on our episode where we did our hype preview, I mentioned some LGS factors that I was kind of Goldilocksing over. And I wanted to say that one of them that I kind of expected to be the case was, unfortunately I expected to be the case. We did not have the hype wave for Final Fantasy and particularly Standard continue post Final Fantasy release, though that the Standard stuff was basically based on what you mentioned. It's not anything to do with Final Fantasy. It's just, hey, we want to play Standard, but we're less excited about it now. We're not really grinding all the LGSs. We're kind of brewing or whatever. But not seeing that attach rate to people that just showed out for Final Fantasy, that was much lower than what we had hoped, but was about where we expected, unfortunately. And I think that, so we've actually held some product back basically for future drafts, specifically of collector boosters. And we'll see how sealed events go for this. But this hasn't been something that has impacted any of our 60 card formats or even our EDH, players really in a way that we kind of had hoped it would.
Got it.
But that's basically the only thing I have is, I think I'd said, this seems like the set that could change things. And it didn't.
Yeah, I won't know about that until the Saturday after we record. That will be the Edge of Eternity pre-release, where I will expect to see some of the people that came out just for Final Fantasy come out for that as well. And if we start to see that player carry over, then I'll know.
That is true. Yeah. Because that was a very traditional thing in the old pre-release days where you'd have your pre-release ringers that would only come for pre-release.
Yep.
And I definitely could see that. Like, some of the people got excited about it, and they're like, all right, I can claim one day every couple months to play this game and have fun, kind of thing.
That, and the people that I know that carried through from the pre-release to the Chocobo
Oh, yeah, they're playing like Standard or something now, aren't they?
It was the Chocobo Racing.
Oh, okay,
so they were coming out for all the... So I had... What it was I had that one, like, there was one guy in particular that missed my pre-release and came to the sealed RCQ, and that was the first time he'd ever played sealed. Period. Ended. He carried through to draft, and I think I saw a couple other players from the pre-release carry through to draft as well. But it was hard for me to attribute whether or not what grabbed them was Final Fantasy as a set, and so they will carry over through the rest because they're interested in the game, etc. Or if it was the rewards from the Chocobo Racing.
Yeah, that they were chasing after because fandom.
Exactly.
That's fair.
They wanted to get the postcard and the pin. And so that is what I will expect to see into this pre-release and then the coming weeks at drafts, is anybody that carries over from Final Fantasy to Edge of Eternities, I will basically consider as a conversion because of the set. Coming to a pre-release and then a draft, in my mind, isn't a conversion.
No.
Because you don't know why they're coming back to play more of the same format. If they don't actually come back outside of this format, then it's difficult for me to kind of agree that person had converted to a Magic player as opposed to a Final Fantasy player. So that's where I am with this. I'm excited to see what happens for sure, because yes, it would be nice to have more people to come out, play Standard, Commander, etc. always, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So for this episode and MTG Cabal Cast, where you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, YouTube, and Blue Sky. I am at Halt I Am Reptar. You are
at Damon_Thurston.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.